Episode 3. Durith the Wind-Breathed, defender of the cycles and 13th king of Ruhar, was slowly being engulfed in flames. Durith watched silently as the fire spread, springing up from the funeral pyre below to lick the king's linen-wrapped body. He could avoid it no longer. His old friend was dead, and the old world had died with him. Durith lifted a wrinkled hand to his brow and closed his eyes, feeling afresh the crushing weight of it all. He had watched them since dusk from a small patch of level ground halfway up Hermit's Hill, the lords of Ruhar and his fellow sages, as they filed in to fill the headland below. With darkness now falling, they had become a large crowd, stretching to the very edges of the weeping cliffs and surrounding the king's mound, where Tirathan's pyre burned. To a man, they were silent and grim-faced. Durith could feel the quiet rage seething amongst them like a riptide, powerful and deadly, just below the surface. Distant thunder rumbled from somewhere far out to sea. Durith lifted his head and looked eastward, out from the high headland and over the waves to the dark clouds rolling in from the vast ocean beyond. In the gathering gloom, he could just make out a pale strip of light clinging to the horizon. Garan an Aruch Thir. Durith's gaze snapped back to the pyre as the voice of High Sage Goland rang out in chant over the crowd. The funeral rites were beginning. The other 11 High Sages of the Order, draped in midnight blue robes and golden stoles, encircled the pyre with Goland atop the king's mound, raising their hands skyward. The crowd responded in unison, chanting the first of the 4 blessings over the soul of their king. To the chest that first did breathe you. The close harmonies of their singing rippled out, mingling with the sound of the sea, and Durith found the familiar words coming from his own mouth also. He saw Tirathan as he had met him, a young boy from the Southlands full of pride and fire, always getting caught up in trouble with Durith and Goland. By the 2nd year of their training, they had become inseparable, often skipping class to go poaching in the Duthanil woods or wandering down into the bustling streets of Mirushin, the nearby river town. The 12 moved their hands to the ground in one swift motion and the winds began to change. Garan an Aruch Thir, Goland called out again as he rose, his voice now carried further by the winds to echo about the surrounding granite cliffs. Here and there Durith saw torches being lit, all the way along the coast towards Mirushin, and up inland towards the ancient stone hermitage perched atop the hill behind him. The waves swelled and beat against the base of the cliffs some 100 feet below. The 12 raised their hands a second time. Durith saw Tirathan as a young man, a sparrow's feather in one hand and a shearwater's in the other, as he received the Ruhari crown and began his rule. Durith had been so proud, so hopeful in seeing a good man come to the throne. To the fire whence your spark flew, came the response from 1,000 tongues, this time as loud as thunder and drowning out the distant roar of the sea. The 12 drew their hands to the floor once more. Durith could feel it, almost see it, the different strands and wisps of wind being pulled earthward to feed the fire. The pyre blazed, sending a spiral of glowing embers up into the blackening sky. Garan an Aruch Thir. With Goland's 3rd call, every sage raised a hand skyward. Durith reached up and out, grasping for the wind. Far above their heads he could feel the higher currents speeding westward like a mighty torrent, as yet untouched by the weaving of the 12. Durith saw Tirathan, crowned in gold and draped in purple beneath the marble arches of Vanboard, joining Lord Talin and Lady Miralyn, daughter of the Headwaters, in marriage, the first ever between a Southland and Heartland house. For a time it had seemed as if true and lasting peace were within reach. From these shores which once did know you, came the sage's response, and he dragged his hand to the earth with the rest of the crowd. The high winds lurched, then came like a flood, sweeping down the hillside and over Durith's head. The 12 caught the wind, channeling it into the base of the fire. Smoke and flame erupted in a blazing whirl, beginning to carry the king's embers far out to sea. Garan an Aruch Thir. The sages fought to stand again under the weight of the wind, and they raised their hands once more. Durith saw his old friend, weary and grey-faced at the far end of the feasting hall, separated from Durith by a group of squabbling lords and high-ranking sages. That had been just a few months ago, at the start of the Troubles, the last time he had seen Tirathan. Durith steadied his breathing and wiped away the tears trickling down his weathered face and into his long white beard. "To the tongue which spoke your name." Durith joined the others as they drew their hands to the ground. Knelt with his hands in the dirt, he lifted his head to watch the final brilliant blaze of the pyre. It had become a tornado of flame, consuming all that it contained, and burning so hot, the 12 had to retreat from the mound and join the rest of the sages beneath the howling winds. A peal of deep, rumbling horn blasts shook the ground as the Hunaru, giant stone horns carved into the cliffs about them, were sounded. "Garan an Aruchfir, my friend," Durith mouthed silently. "May the wind carry you home."